Hey everyone, it's Max here from Reptile Fanatics. So I spent a week in the Cook Islands and I thought I would go check out the local gecko species because the first couple of days and in past trips I noticed that there were multiple species that you would encounter, and I'm assuming none of them are native where they've been naturalized to Cook Islands, but they're actually native to Rarotonga. So this first little guy is the first guy I encountered. Now I spent 2-3 days every night and day going out looking for them. Now the first crazy thing I saw was geckos on the beach, and I'm talking meters away from the ocean water, right? So these guys were super cool. Now the 4 species I believe I encountered were the Mourning Gecko, so that's Mourning Gecko. The geckos are in the description below. There's also the pelagic gecko, the Oceanic Gecko, the house gecko from Asia, as well as the Indo-Pacific slender gecko. I think these are the 4 species I encountered. Just looking at the colorations, the patterns, and looking at them in day and in the evening, right? So, and that was a boreal, diurnal, and then nocturnal species. But these guys were crazy, crazy cool, super gorgeous animals, and literally, like I said, meters away from the water. As you can see here, these two just sitting on the rocks at night. I imagine that they like the warmth of the rocks. The water's right there, right? That's the ocean. Now, I imagine from observances that these guys were all over the rocks, and the rocks were still wet and they were really warm to touch, so I'm assuming that they like the warmth and there's lots of insects for them to eat. But these guys were super cool. I think this is the Mourning Gecko. I believe it could be the Oceanic Gecko. Between the two I was really stuck on the patterns and colorations, but essentially there are about 8 species in the Cook Islands of geckos. They've all been introduced, and they're super cool, and they're all different in regards to parts of the world they come from, right? Most of them come from Asia, and they're kind of introduced in the regions of Asia, India, Polynesia, Australia, etc. But this guy's super cool. These guys were super cool. So there was actually 2 that I found on the water. One that we'll see later on in the video with much lighter coloration. This guy was a Mourning Gecko, just because after doing some due diligence and research, the patterns made sense, and it was definitely the Mourning, in my opinion, anyway. But I spent a few days filming some of the gecko species. I love geckos. I think geckos are really cool animals, really unique. And therefore it was a great opportunity to go and film geckos in the Cook Islands. Now also this crab was quite big, also out at night, this yellow sea crab out in the sand, but really cool and quite big, actually, probably longer than my hand in length, so he was a decent size for sure. All right, now we'll keep walking along, and like I said, these geckos were scattered everywhere, right? So different sizes, different colorations. I think I saw at least, like I said, 2 species on these rocks on the water right by the beach. Now this is another species of gecko. I believe this is the Asian house gecko, or the house gecko. Quite big, so probably the length of my hand this guy was, so he's quite big, very skittish, but these guys were super cool. And the coloration was, I guess, a lot more pale in color, as you can see, so like a lighter gray to almost a tan, some of them, but these guys were super cool. Very common throughout Asia, so if you've been to Thailand or Indonesia, Bali, you'll see these guys everywhere, right? And they were really loud, so they would bark at night. Now a lot of people find that peculiar, but geckos do actually make noise. They have a call, so these guys would bark from the early stages of the evening, and you'd hear them all night, and they'll just click and clack, and at first you're thinking it's birds, but when you do some more research and you understand how the geckos do actually make a noise, and that they are quite loud, it's more like a clicking. They call it a bark, but it's more like a cackle almost. But very, very unique. This guy was hunting a moth. It was really cool. But yeah, they were quite loud and you can hear them through the night, which was really, really cool. All right, back to the beach. This is night 3, I believe, and once again saw geckos all over the place. These guys were all about the same size, so that's why I think it's the Mourning Gecko. They all had similar colorations, and they're probably about 2 to 3 inches in length, and they were all about 2 to 3 inches in length, no bigger. And I was thinking, well, they could all be juveniles, but then I saw a lot of them. I saw at least 20 to 30 of these guys, so I'm assuming that some of these guys are adults, as well as there were a lot smaller ones that were probably juveniles. But yeah, 2 to 3 inches, maybe 4 inches, the longest length. But like I said, really, really cool. This guy was a lot paler, but still had the same harlequin patterns up his spine, as you can see. Absolutely gorgeous animal. Alright, now we're going to get to a much darker species I encountered on the water. So maybe it was to do with the camouflage that they were, in the crevice of this rock, but it was at night, so I just don't see if that was the case, but I believe this is a different species. It could be the Oceanic Gecko. It was much darker, or it could be the Mourning Gecko, just a slightly darker coloration. It was hard to see. He did have similar patterns on his back and down his spine, but otherwise, still gorgeous animal. These guys were super cool. I spent a lot of time out there filming, so I was out there every night along the beach in complete darkness and just had my phone for filming. This guy was a Mourning Gecko, and his coloration is stunning. So he's a lot darker. So I'm assuming, while I'm thinking about it and rewatching this, I'm thinking probably a Mourning Gecko. So it's Mourning, like you're in mourning, and the other nickname for them is Sad Gecko, which is, I'm not sure why they have that name, but it's a very interesting and peculiar name. All right, now at night again, this was actually right outside our villa. Really cute little guy. So I believe this is a little tiny harlequin, sorry, a Mourning Gecko with the harlequin patterns. So they were quite common, and they're also everywhere. So really close to the beach, all throughout the villa, the resort. So I think that's just, I guess they like to be close to the water, maybe. Right, saw this guy during the day. Now this is definitely either a house gecko or an oceanic gecko, or a stump-toed gecko. So one of the three. I couldn't decide. I couldn't get enough, I guess, enough of time with him, but super cool. He was quite big, probably about 4 to 6 inches, and as you can see, really dark. This guy saw actually in one of the resort bathrooms, and I thought, hey, might as well film while he's in there. He's quite big as well, 4 to 6 inches in length. From the distance, I think it was, once again, a house gecko or a Pacific gecko or oceanic gecko. And once again, same again. So the guys that were hiding during the day had much darker colorations. I think this was a different species. Super cool. This is me, and I was able to catch a juvenile little guy. Really cute, really cool. Handled him for a bit. Honestly, they were so springy. I couldn't believe it. I've got geckos in New Zealand, and these guys had hops. These guys could jump like frogs. It was crazy. So very agile, very versatile, and they didn't even have to really run. They could literally jump from hand to hand. They could hop. They could jump from your hand to the wall, and it was just, yeah, very athletic lizards. But once again, on the species here, I think this was a house gecko, just an Asian house gecko, very common just by its coloration and pattern. But as you can see here, watch this. It just jumps. Doesn't even run. Just does a little leap. Yeah, and runs off. Super cool. And once again here, I think this is a house gecko. This guy was really cool, quite big, probably about 4 to 6 inches in length, and I was able to get quite close to him, but looks very different. So you could really tell the difference between the species, as in some were really long and slender in regards to their body. They were quite elongated in length, quite thin, where this guy was a bit chunky. He was a bit broader in regards to wider, a bit bigger, and his colorations were a lot different. So already a different species. This little guy's obviously had some of his tail regrowth done, but really cool colorations. Looks like a Mourning Gecko to me with the patterns on their back. They will have a similar harlequin theme. And saw this cute little guy as well. So, like I said, a lot of filming, a lot of geckos. I think I probably filmed the same 3 to 4 species, if not, maybe even less, maybe 3 species. Someone who's probably spent a lot more time studying wildlife in Cook Islands would probably be able to correct the list I have below, but that's just my first perspectives and visuals, I guess. The idea of this video is more just for, see, he's flicking his tail, really, really cool, kind of a defense, like a sign of aggression, but the idea of this video is more for entertainment purposes, showing you guys that there is really, really cool gecko species in Rarotonga. So if you ever visit, definitely keep your eyes and ears out at night and during the day in the shade and dark areas around your resort. And if you go to the beach, check out the rocks. They're everywhere.